Which made this? Hey everybody, X-Sketch back with more Tyranny X-Files, and we're still talking about Season 2. For those who don't know, I've already uploaded a video talking about the first 14 episodes of this awesome season. But I waffled on for like 2 hours and was like, yeah, I should probably take a break and come back fresh with the rest of the season. So, link to the first half will be in the description. But today, we are starting out with episode 15, Fresh Bones, brought to us by Howard Gordon, and it's a really creepy episode. I find it a little unsettling to, you know, when you're thinking about the story, because it deals with this Haitian immigration detention camp, and the guards there start, you know, one of the guards there from there dies, and this like voodoo symbol turns up, and Mulder and Scully get called in, and then like the guy turns up later, resurrected. It's that kind of thing where you see that the military personnel are doing their job at this camp, but it does make you unsure, like, how good the representation of the Haitian community is. And as a pasty white chick, I'm like, how do I feel about this episode? Especially, again, so much as, say, season 1 was like, yeah, but it was made in the 90s, and I feel this is it feels very much a product of its time, in its storytelling. And of course, you know, it's written by a white guy, so it's like, it's not written from a place of experience or that. But it's a genuine, you know, it deals with Haitian practice of voodoo and zombies way before they became oversaturated in popular culture. And, you know, you see some of what these detainees at the camp are having to go through. I genuinely enjoy the episode. Like I say, the atmosphere, the cinematography is creepy, and the idea of zombies is always one. Obviously, the zombies in this are the more, you know, the ones that are dealt with in like rituals and stuff like that, as opposed to your horror movie, skin falling off representations. This is the more like, you know, people being poisoned with, say, tetrodotoxin or something, being paralyzed and then buried in a catatonic state and then resurrected several days later. These are those kind of zombies, as opposed to your horror fare. But that whole thought alone just still wigs me out, and there's some genuinely creepy, troubling moments with stuff like Scully having a guy coming out of her hand chanting away and stuff, or you know, bodies turning up in bathtubs and stuff like that. There's some really good horror in this. It's one of those kind of episodes that I think is ideal to watch at Halloween. I enjoy the kid that plays Chester, who helps Mulder and Scully out, and is really the only reason why Scully survives at the end, in a way. But I have an issue with Chester, because, so it turns out that he's a ghost. But because they're like, oh no, he turned up in this, you know, he turned up dead in this fight that happened earlier at the camp, before Mulder and Scully got there. And so he's a ghost, but Mulder and Scully buy him fries, and he sat there eating them and stuff, and one of the guards avoids him and stuff, and never indicates to Mulder and Scully, that kid's dead. What the fuck? He's just like, no, I'm scared, and Mulder is like, why? So yes, you could say, yeah, but at least you're being like, there's something not quite right with this kid. but at the same time, you're like, why didn't he just say it? Just for narrative sakes, it's a little annoying. That would probably be one of my little. It's a little niggling thing, and somebody will say, "Yeah, but it's easily explained." It's not something that takes away from my enjoyment of the episode. But it's just something that niggles at me. But otherwise, it's a competent episode. It's not outstanding in any particular way. I feel it suffers with pacing sometimes. But otherwise, it's an enjoyable episode. It's something a little different. And I think it's really digging into like the show's horror roots, and that was something that the show always did quite well. So yeah, I don't know. It's not amazing. It's not bad. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly no lower than B. I don't know if I'd put it in A. That's a tough one. I think there are better episodes here. Ooh. Choices. No, I think I'm going to put it in A. Because it is actually really uncomfortable and like I say, just bone chilling at times. So yeah, we'll put that in A. I may reconsider when I consider the other episodes, but for now, let's go with A. But next up, we return to the mythology. For better or worse, right? It's Colony. And you may think, but Tash, like, Colony's a good episode, and it is. Brought to us by Chris Carter. Based on a story developed by himself and David Duchovny, because David Duchovny actually came up with the idea of the alien bounty hunter. So, we've got him to thank for that, which is kind of... I mean, the alien bounty hunter is an amazing character, so, I think it's a really cool idea. The problem is, the reason why my hesitation with this episode is it starts the trend of just because basically this goes a lot. My main issue is this kind of retconning in a way of stuff that happened in the Erlenmeyer flask. We saw the effects of the green blood on people in the Erlenmeyer flask, and that is something that does continue here. But it feels as if they completely forgot the fact that Mulder was actually affected by the green blood in Erlenmeyer flask. Yet he ended up absolutely fine. And nobody ever figures out what helped him and that. And it's just completely forgotten. And the reason why I moan is because, yeah, you can say Erlenmeyer flask, they were still figuring stuff out. But my biggest issue with this show is Chris Carter's reticence to use a show Bible. And for those who don't know, show Bibles are like, they're really important. You set out like what you want to do with the show, the basic thread, and especially once they added the mythology, it would have been good to have a kind of a basic roadmap. I've also been found out from William B. Davis's memoirs book that, basically, because there was no show Bible, there was no like background or incentives or any kind of information for, like, especially Smoking Man, a lot of characters. They were just these vague, shadowy figures kind of thing with no... And I think that especially shows out when we then see, say, different middle name used for Samantha Mulder or whatever. You're just like, oh my god, get, like, the facts straight. But Chris Carter always refused to use a show Bible because he believed that it stunted creativity. So as a result, this show retcons itself so much and you know, suffers with continuity so badly. It is so infuriating as somebody invested in it to follow. Now I know a lot of people didn't enjoy the mythology, but I think they would have enjoyed it more had there been an actual vision or just some kind of proper notes for people to follow, to go right when they're, you know, the writers to follow, to go right, this has happened before. I mean, I'm not saying like you could, like, say it's only a basic roadmap that would have helped, but you know, you can still adapt stuff and evolve. Stuff can still evolve, much like you know, characters and stuff like that. But the problem is this show loves to do its whole, oh, we're going to do stuff but then reset. And I said this before. And as a result, you know, it wants to go on the back of stuff that's happened before, like with Erlenmeyer Flask. But at the same time, just conveniently forget some things, because of course then it makes it more acceptable to new viewers. And the people that were watching it already feel kind of messed with. Like completely like, well, you know, we get that you're loyal to us, but screw you, we want to appeal to these new viewers. And I guess that's the thing with a show that you know, is predominantly known as its Monster of the Week, and that's what the whole first season was. When you're known as the Monster of the Week show, you can be reluctant to go with that kind of serialized drama. But yeah, I just so it seems Mulder gets shoots the alien bounty hunter. This is a thing for the only reason why I know this is mainly a thing in Endgame, but I bring it up now because we start out the episode with Scully walking in Mulder in this bathtub after being found out on the snow, and we've got a nice classic Carter Mulder monologuing scene. And yeah, we recognise the makeup, the effects of the green blood, but yeah, I should really be talking about this in Endgame, but it just, and that's the thing, there's so much of the stuff, you know, we've got this episode, this two-parter brings up so much stuff with the clones, and again, you're introducing the alien bounty hunter, who I think is a brilliant addition, and I love little things like Scully's like, what? When her shoe gets eaten through by the green blood and stuff. I find it frustrating because I love this two-parter so much. But yeah, this first episode particularly, I felt had a few pacing issues, and some dialogue choices that didn't work quite well. But I think it's an interesting story because Samantha Mulder supposedly comes back, played adult version of Samantha, who, inverted commas, played by brilliantly by Megan Leach, who actually at some points I always feel could have probably been another Scully sister, to be honest, more than necessarily Mulder's sister. But I enjoy her as Samantha. So yeah, she turns up, and Mulder gets called to see his mum and dad, and he's like, Samantha. So he meets her, and he believes it. But then it turns out that other than, like, you've got these, Mulder's got to get involved because of these multiple doctors that are working in the gynecology field and stuff. They start turning up dead, and then it turns out that they're all identical because they're clones, and they're being killed off by the alien bounty hunter. So that's how Mulder and Scully get involved. And then, you know what, I will say there is a kind of Chekhov's gun moment in a way, because I never really considered it, but Mulder gets run over at one point while chasing this guy, and the following scene, he says about his phone being mobile phone being wrecked, and for the rest of the episode, this is one of those things that I always forget. You spend the rest of the episode going, why are Mulder and Scully not contacting each other? Because Scully ends up kind of on the on the run. Scully honestly trying to hide in casual wear instead of being, because she doesn't want to get hunted down by this alien bounty hunter, is hilarious. And it's, although I will take issue with the fact that she gets on this bus in her little hoodie, so it's so adorable, and she's all like leaving Mulder voice messages, and again I'm like, why is nobody picking up their phones? And I'm like, oh wait, Mulder hasn't got his phone, what the hell? And of course he's in Quanakatag, or whatever. Is it in Quanakatag? I'm pretty sure it's at Quanakatag. No, it's at West Tisbury, sorry, I think it's at. Anyway, so yeah, he's out of state. So and then I'm like, later on I'm like, oh yeah, it's because he doesn't have his phone anymore. But yeah, so I will say again, a little, just, I'm like, what? So Scully gets on this bus, and she's leaving a message for Mulder. She's like, I don't know, if I'm being followed. I think I'm fine. But the alien bounty hunter, it turns out, is already on that bus. How did he know that she was going to get on that bus? Like, she just literally, you see her, you actually see her walk up to that bus and just get on it. Now, unless I missed a scene where she says what bus she's going to get on, maybe I did. Well, now I'm starting to question myself. Anyway, I'm probably wrong. Ignore me. But yeah, it's one of those things. I just watch it, and it's always weird to me that the bounty hunter is already on the bus. Otherwise, it's a good episode, and I think really the second half of this, Endgame, is a lot stronger. But I think it's an interesting setup. I think it brings us elements that are interesting further on down the line. I really take issue with its very mixed direction. That, like I say, I think you could say that they were finding their way, but it just annoys me at times. But otherwise, I like this episode. I think it's a good idea. I think it's got a lot of good dialogue, a lot of good interactions between Mulder and Scully. In the short time that they are together in this episode, and I think it really shook the boat. Having this Samantha Mulder turn up, and it sets up. It's got the cliffhanger at the end of this. Also, worst motel owner ever. But it's got a lot of tense moments, a lot of kind of nail-biting moments, and the to be continued at the end is just awful. It's not Ascension. It's not like Dwayne Barry level awfulness, or any of the other season finale awfulness. But I thought this was a really tense episode at times. I just don't think it's perfect. And I think it's because of other issues that I'm just like, but I think that's more a series issue, maybe more so than this particular episode. I would put it episode an A. I don't think it's perfect, but I do enjoy it. And this, I always watch it as a two-parter, so considering the episode on its own is a little difficult. But I think, just thinking about it and like where things develop in the story, I think this is only an A, because easily Endgame for me is an S rank. I'm just going to put that up there now. Endgame, brought to us by Frank Spotnitz, Uncle Frank, is a much stronger episode, I feel. You have the carry on from the fact that the alien bounty hunter, I think that's an amazing scene where the alien bounty hunter disguises himself as Mulder to get him into Scully's motel room, which is hilarious to me because he could have just burst in there. I don't know what all the point of all the deception is for. I guess he thinks he's going to get the information out of her, but I'm just like, well, you just went brute force in the end anyway, so what was the point? So I think that's a really good scene, though, between them two. But I love the direction of this episode. Scully gets kidnapped. Bounty hunter offers a trade. He wants Samantha in return for Scully. And Mulder, bless him, he's like, yeah, no. And he gets Skinner involved. I will say the snipers that supposedly can hit a quarter from like 3 miles away are garbage, so that was disappointing. But I just love the fact, even though obviously Mulder didn't know where the trade, like how badly it would go, he was still willing to give up his 20 plus years missing sister for Scully. But I will say that my favourite thing, and I cannot, when I rewatched this 6 months ago, again, I was watching these episodes back to back, so I think that's why it became more thing. And again, I just seen, we'd had the abduction arc, we'd had like Donnie Faster and stuff like that. In this scene where Skinner goes into Mulder's apartment, he demands, he wants to know where Scully is and that. And you could just see, I couldn't help but just go, like, try to fill in for Mulder. Just go, I don't know, I keep losing her. Because it is a recurring theme in this season specifically, that for whatever reason they felt the need to keep making Scully get taken, abducted. But yeah, you feel so bad for Mulder when he's just like, I don't know, she keeps getting taken. It's hilarious in a way, and I feel in a way, I do wonder how much of Frank Spotnitz was just joking, like, wink, wink, self-deprecating in a way. But anyway, it's just I just enjoy the writing a lot more in this episode. I like just the desperation of Mulder, the sadness. When he tells his father, I lost Samantha again? That poor man, honestly, he looks so broken. And he's got his head, David Duchovny's acting is not the greatest at times. But in that, just that submission to his father where he's looking down and he's like, I'm sorry. He's crying, not particularly good, as per usual. But he's just like, sorry, I lost her. And he's looking down the whole time, and you can just feel. And Peter Donat as Pa Mulder, as Bill Mulder, is so good at doing that, just disapproving, frustrated glare. It's a really good scene between the two of them. You feel that kind of Mulder feeling like he's let everybody down as usual. I just found that really well written and really well handled. I just think there's really good action here, and of course you can't talk about this episode without talking about the amazing set of the actual like moving conning tower in the ice pack. That that was amazing technical, you know, the model that was made for that and stuff was really well done. Just as a techie and that, I found it really interesting, and there's a good, on the DVDs, there's a really good behind the scenes clip showing it working and stuff like that. So, and I, you know, there's a good reason why it's on the box art and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the action in this is good and tense. Really good script. Of course, we've got that lovely, you know, Scully stroking Mulder's hair when they think he's dying and stuff like that, and that whole final scene. I think it's sad in a way because it makes Scully's bed vigil with Mulder in Dead Alive a little less impactful, because you feel like you've been there before in this episode. But it was still beautiful. And I love, again, Mulder putting himself, you know, like, I don't want Scully to cross that line. And it's interesting to see, really, this is like the first time that we see the whole Mulder saying, you know, there has to be a line somewhere, and I'm drawing that for you here. And it just makes you can't, in hindsight, having, you know, thinking of Requiem and that, it's really interesting. And of course, X versus Skinner SmackDown. It's amazing. But it does make me, the X v Skinner thing does make me think back to the whole, you know, X saying you have a friend at the FBI. I get the impression, I want to see a spin-off prequel of, like, because I get the impression that Skinner and X, like, have had some kind of communication or something at some point. There is some look of recognition, and Skinner just knows that this guy is the one that's there to give the info. So, I mean, I like the idea that Skinner turned up at the apartment block without the information, and was just waiting, maybe following X or something. But yeah, that's a really good scene. This episode is so enjoyable. Even if you're not watching it as part of the obviously you need to watch. I think these episodes are definitely, for the most enjoyment, better watched back to back together. You know, I've got the VHS, the old VHS that did it as a two-parter and that. These are definitely watched back to back. But this is easily the stronger half. As a whole, I love this two-parter so much. But I easily think that Endgame is the stronger episode. So, no, definitely check it out. I think it's interesting, though, when you think about, because obviously later Chris Carter and Frank Spotnitz did so much work together. I think it's interesting to say, like, an episode like this, 2 episodes like this, where you're contrasting the 2 writers who then complemented each other well in other stuff. I think it's interesting to see their 2 episodes separately. But yeah, so that was Endgame, Colony Endgame. Next up, we have Fearful Symmetry, an episode that absolutely feels like it was written by Chris Carter, but surprisingly is not. It's essentially an environmental episode talking about, you know, the animal extinction and stuff like that, by dealing with animals at a zoo that are being abducted, impregnated, and having their fetuses taken away. And then the animals are returned, but not at the zoo, so then they end up getting killed in the wilds of humanity. Yeah, the episode's a little clumsy. And that's why I always joke that I genuinely always think that this is written by Chris Carter, because it's environmental based. It feels a lot like Darkness Falls, in that, I mean, it's not as enjoyable as Darkness Falls, but, you know, it deals with, say, the environmentalists are trying to do the right thing by doing quite possibly the stupidest shit ever, and you're just like, am I supposed to be rooting for these people or just saying no? But yeah, these people who are freeing wild animals and stuff like that, you're just like, oh my god. But like I say, it's not and it ends even with a very kind of preachy Mulder monologue. And I think that's my main problem with this episode. I have no issue, obviously, you know, I've always been environmentally minded, but and I have no issue with episodes that want to teach us stuff and be moralistic in a way. But I do feel like this episode gets a little too preachy. It just feels a little too preachy at times, and the pacing again feels a little off at times. But we got a good guest spot from Jane Atkinson, who just comes up. She gets on my nerves at times in this episode, but I feel like she's the right person to play this Willa Ambrose, who's been called in to help this zoo with a lot of its issues, like you know, tiny pens for these massive animals and stuff. And she has a gorilla that is in her care that knows sign language, and she's very attached to, that she sees like as her daughter in a way. I will say the gorilla costume, not the most convincing at times, which is probably just as well, that they a lot of the shots of Sophie are very poorly lit and very rare, because and the animal sounds just sound like somebody getting out of bed in the morning at times. It's just this I'm like, really? Okay, so they couldn't get any genuine gorilla grunt sound effects or something. So I have to quickly interject here because I completely forgot to talk about quite possibly the bizarrest, stupidest supporting character appearance I have ever seen in any show. And that is the Lone Gunman. But not all of them. Just for Hickey and Byers. I'll assume Dean Haglund was unavailable. Now, don't get me wrong. Any excuse to see the Lone Gunman, and I'm usually a super happy person. But this scene is so pointless and short. It's ridiculous. So, you have Mulder in some random FBI field office or police station who makes a satellite video call to the gunman that then gets put up on a projector. He's not even looking at it on a computer screen or laptop. It's up on this projector, and they are filmed looking like they're on TV. It's like their whole top half. And Mulder is in this unlit room. The only light source into this room is from through a window into the outside office and the projector screen. So how they're able to make him out on this 1994 webcam is impressive all on its own. But they're there just to give the tiniest exposition on the history of the zoo and the fact there's been no pregnancies brought to term there, and a little bit about Sophie and the fact that she knows sign language, and that's it. Absolutely nothing we don't garner from any other characters or just from watching the episode. It's so badly implemented and not particularly well scripted or shot, and I'm just like, why didn't Mulder phone them up? If you really wanted this scene that easily breaks the pacing of the episode, it just brings everything to an absolute halt. You could have easily had, if you had to have it though, you could have had Mulder phone them and like film their side of the conversation, but this whole setup felt completely unnecessary, and it didn't ring true to me that possibly the most paranoid people on the planet would be totally cool with doing a video call over satellite into a law building, into a law enforcement building. And apparently Langley was the only one who had an issue with it. I'm just like, this doesn't ring true to me. I know a lot of people were like, oh yeah, the Gunman are in this episode. And like I say, normally I would be absolutely okay with that. But only if it feels true to the character. Only if it feels right for the episode and the storytelling. And this just didn't to me. And I'm kind of gutted I forgot to mention it when I recorded this video originally. Because it is one of those things that always niggles at me when I think about the episode. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Maybe it's just a personal thing. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. I don't know. But anyway, I'll divert back to myself for the rest of my thoughts on the episode. But I just had to add this in. But it's actually, for all its faults, I actually don't mind the episode. Stupidest aliens ever. I mean, I have issues with the whole, like, there seems to be a part missing, because I don't know if they're implying, I think the impression I got was that the animals were being abducted, impregnated, carrying the baby, you know, being pregnant for some time, and then having the babies taken and then returned, through that joyous thing of, you know, space travel and space-time continuum and stuff like that, that was possible. I think when I watched it back in the day, I thought they were being taken, impregnated, then returned, and then retaken again. But I think what they're implying is that they're being taken, and that's how it's being done. But at one point, Sophie says, like, when Mulder asks Willa to ask Sophie some questions, and because Sophie keeps referring to being afraid of this light. And Ambrose is like, oh, what, you know, she's asking, why are you afraid of light? And Sophie says that the baby's going to go fly. And you're like, well, wait, that would imply that, is Sophie pregnant already? That can't be, because at no point has she been mated. So I'm like, so does she just know that she's going to get impregnated? What? I felt like there was a plot hole hit there. And again, as always, and again, it was 6 months ago I watched these episodes, so maybe I'm just forgetting something. But I end up coming away going, I feel like there was something missing. Maybe a scene was deleted or something. But otherwise, the aliens that, you know, mastered space travel, but couldn't be asked to learn GPS settings. Clearly not clearly this is definitely a pre-Google Maps era, I guess. The joy of the 90s. But otherwise, there are a lot of issues with this episode. But I actually don't mind it. I think it's a very Excelsis Day level episode. It's problematic. Again, that's what I say about this season, is that it is easily the most perfect and yet perfectly flawed, you know, season ever, because it's got such good episodes, but just have a few niggling issues that you're like, yeah, this episode is not as great as it could be. So I think I would put it in B. It's not great by any means. I might reconsider, but for now I think I would put it in B, because it's definitely not one I go back to. I find myself just face palming sometimes while watching it, and there are some pacing issues. So, but I'd be really curious to know your thoughts, because it is, like I say, it does try with its moral, and I'm curious what people's thoughts are on it. Next up, we have got Dodcom, one of my favourite episodes. Easily, when I think of season 2, this is one of those episodes that I always feel brings this season up in quality. Brought to us by Howard Gordon and Alex Ganza, based on a story by Howard Gordon, and I think this is easily the duo's best episode, the strongest written episode. I don't know if it's because, and I always think of this episode in the grand scheme of Ice, Darkness Falls, and Firewalker. That kind of very isolated scenario, kind of with very, very few characters in. It's that kind of episode. These people turn up, are discovered, seemingly really, really aged, and Mulder and Scully go to investigate, and they get stranded out on this ship with the guy at Trondheim who took them, and I will say, when I played the Dark Pictures anthology game, Man of Medan, and you get trapped out on this boat in the middle of nowhere, I don't know why, this was the episode. I just couldn't help but keep thinking of this episode, and I was like, I really want to go watch .com now. It's a really good episode. It's a really well-written episode, and it's a very atmospheric, well-shot episode. Can't be anything wrong with it, surely. Absolutely nothing. Except for one tiny plot hole. Where in the flying fuck did Olafsson disappear to? Okay, so, set the scene. Sailor Trondheim has taken Mulder and Scully to the abandoned USS Arden out in the middle of the sea. His first mate stays with the boat while Trondheim, Mulder and Scully go investigate the Arden. All of a sudden turns up dead. Turns out that there was some stowaways on the boat, led by Olafsson, who are whalers. I think they were whalers or some kind of, pirates. But they take Olafsson's men disappear with the boat. We see it go. We see Trondheim lose his shit, his boat disappearing, and Olafsson gets tied up. While Mulder and Scully go investigate, Olafsson convinces Trondheim to let him go. Mulder comes back, gets frustrated that the rope has been cut, and we never see Olafsson again. He never gets mentioned. He didn't escape. Where would he go? We never get the impression that Trondheim's men came back. I mean, God knows why they would. Again, it's another Doug Spinney situation in a way. I'm just sad that I love this episode so much. Like I say, it is easily Gordon and Ganser's best story from their run on the show. This is where I come across another one by Howard Gordon. I'm like, actually, I like that one. But I love this story. I love this episode. It is so well paced and beautifully shot and atmospheric and good face makeup for the most part. I was always frustrated that Trondheim doesn't look as made up as Mulder and Scully do. But I enjoy the makeup work. And I love the interactions between the characters. I love watching Scully's, doctor mode kick in. I love Mulder turning into this bitter old man kind of thing. There's a lot of fun characterization here. And of course, Mulder and Scully try to sacrifice themselves for each other, and it's so lovely. If I could just forget about this, Olafsson randomly getting abducted or something, I wouldn't have any issue with this episode whatsoever. But as it stands, it just bugs me. For the rest, I get that the rest of the episode, needs to focus on Mulder and Scully and the treachery of Trondheim and, his selfishness as he locks himself in with this with the only safe water on the whole ship. But it just bugs me. The rest, I'm like, okay, but what happened to the other guy? Especially when you're sat there and you don't think about it. You're like, that's what it gets you. You don't normally think about it. And then I'm just sat there the rest of the time just going, no, seriously, where did he go? So it's a little niggle. I get that it's a niggle that's very personal to me. But yeah, it just always bugs me. But otherwise, yeah, beautifully shot. I think it's another Rob Bowman directorial. Either Rob Bowman or David Knight. I'm pretty sure it's Rob Bowman, but I could be wrong. So again, more information at the bottom. But no, without question, this episode, yeah, just without hesitation, is an S. I love .com. I have probably watched it way too many times. It's a very simple story, though. I think that's what it is. It's very cinematic, but simplistic. It's a very simple, very contained, but very emotionally charged, I find. And again, very tense and just thick with that tension. So I highly recommend it. It's one of my all-time favourite episodes. And again, like I say, it plays into that kind of the isolated, the trapped, claustrophobic feel of episodes like Ice and that. But I feel this was a lot more successful than Firewalker. But from that tense stress, we turn to Darren Morgan, fresh out of his condom outfit, writing Humbug. And yeah, this what can you say? I think actually this is like the forgotten Darren Morgan episode. When people talk about his writing and his episodes, a lot of people obviously go to Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose. A lot of people talk about Jose Chung's From Outer Space, which we'll get to that another time. Well, next season basically. But Humbug is one of those lesser talked about episodes, and I think it's because it's trying for this, don't judge people, by looks and stuff like that. But the thing is it is a deformed, conjoined twin that extracts itself from its brother to find a new body to bury its head in that kills the people. And you're like, wait, freaks aren't, awful people or anything like that, and yet you've got that. So there is that kind of, but I think that's the genius that is Darren Morgan. Is you can go away, like, there are so many funny bits in this, but it has a lot of heart, and as a result you find yourself drawn in, and there's a lot of very clever lines. I mean, so like Lanny, who says that Mr. Nutt doesn't said that he shouldn't be in the sideshows because it's it doesn't give him dignity, and then he's like, so now I carry people's luggage. It's so well acted. It's fun to see Jim Rose and his kind of circus sideshow friends in this episode. I don't think it's worth really saying too much about it, if I'm honest. It's got some really good acting in it. It's actually got something I never considered, is the guy who runs the disfigured guy who runs the funhouse kind of thing. He tells the story of the Siamese twins Chang and Eng, and it's amazing how, and he's telling it to Scully, and you don't really realize until the end of the episode, or for me, it was more so on multiple viewings, that you really realize how basically the guy's telling you what the solution is. That it's about this Siamese twin, and how one treats their body can affect the other one. And of course, Lanny is this alcoholic, and Lenny is trying to find a healthier host. Yeah, it's just, I think I don't want to say too much, because I think it's one of those episodes you really need to experience. I think the writing's on point. It's so much fun, and I love. There's some odd moments that I'm like, okay, was that necessary? But at the same time, say like Scully answers the her caravan door to Lanny, who stood there. He's only turned up with his dressing gown on. I think he might have pants on, but he's got his dressing gown on, and Scully is eyeing like the conjoined twin, because she's a medical doctor. It's for science. But at the same time, he's eyeing up her boobs, the swell of her boobs in her pajamas. And I think that's the interesting thing, that kind of it's done in a. I always found it a bit like, okay, was that really necessary? But at the same time, that's the point. Is that it's our curiosity and our stuff like that. And I think it's in his hands, with excellent direction from Kin Manners. I think it's really well handled in a way that if, say, Chris Carter was trying something like this, he would have made it. I mean, look, we got Postmodern Prometheus, and again, we'll get to that when we get to season 5. But I felt this was done from the heart. I think it was trying to be genuine. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and it's a good 42 minutes of that kind of. It's an interesting thought piece in a way. Kind of like I think there's something very Mulder and Scully meet the were-monster about it in a way. But yeah, it's a good laugh. It's a heartwarming, if you will. It's an entertaining episode, basically. Sorry, it's one of those episodes, like you really enjoy it. Again, this is not, and actually the back half of this season has a lot of episodes that I enjoy, and yet when I go back to, say, a season and I'll pick an episode, for some reason I pick a lot, not for some reason, because as I said, they're really good episodes, but I'll automatically go to certain ones. Be that the abduction arc, be that Dodcom, be that Little Green Men, or like I say, Firewalker I go back to a lot. But a lot of these last episodes I'm going to talk about, I really like. And actually, I find that these last episodes as well don't get anywhere near as much attention. As much retrospectives and talked about as much as they deserve. But yeah, without question, I think, without question, it's an S rank. Would I say it's my favourite Darren Morgan episode? That I don't know. I think it's up there. But I love Weremonster. And actually, I think pacing wise, this is better than Weremonster. I think it's really well told. And I think, again, that's a good mixture of, the writing of Morgan and the direction of Manners, who, obviously sadly passed away before the revival and stuff. So, because he would have done some excellent work. Probably, brought up the revival would have been a lot better, I think, with him. But yeah, I just highly recommend Humbug. I don't know where I would put it in my Darren Morgan episodes, but it's certainly up there. It's by no means bad. next up, from doing what the X-Files does well, is go from horror to comedy to shit your pants terror and uncomfortableness, is the Kalashari. And the interesting thing about the Kalashari, one, it's brought to us by Sarah B. Chano, who of course brought us Aubrey, and she comes back with more strong female characters, which again is well appreciated. She does not use Karen Kosev particularly well in this episode, because Karen Kosev, counsellor to the agents, now apparently is social services and dealing with children. I don't know. I'm still baffled to this day by this her appearance here. I guess the actress was available and they were like, okay, just go for it. But yeah, no, we get the introduction of Chuck Burks. Bill Dow returns to the show, but now in a guest character appearance. Chuck is one of those characters I really wish we'd had more of. I would have loved Chuck Burks and the Lone Gunman meeting up. Can you imagine? But what I was going to say is the interesting thing, other than Chano's writing here, this episode on the DVD sets, this episode makes this set get thrown on the floor. One sec. Sorry, I know I could have just carried on talking without picking it up, but I actually gave me a chance to get a drink. Anyway, so yeah, this episode caused the box set to be rated 18, which in America is NC-17, and it's funny to me because Home from season 4 is always seen to be the episode that went too far, and yet that's only a 15 rating here, R rating, and yet the Kalashari brings the rating of a whole box set up to 18. So I say all that, and that's a silly thing to mention, but genuinely, there are some really scary moments in this episode. Very unsettling, and just there's a lot of you have these rituals and chickens being killed and exorcism of the child. And can I say, the kid that plays Charlie and the evil twin, who I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. I don't know why. Charlie and... Oh my god. I know the surname of the family is like Holvey. It's Charlie, and Charlie just makes me think of Jason in the Heavy Rain. Anyway, the kid that plays... I don't know if he went into acting later or anything, or what else he's been in, but he is really good. And I don't know, what had to be done for stuff like the exorcism scene. I don't know what had to be done to stop him from, seeing that and that. But the faces he pulls while he's doing the possessed segment and stuff is genuinely bone-chilling and just reinforces my children are evil things. So, but he's really good. And it's just... It's a really... I mean, there's a scene where the father gets hanged by a garage door. Now, apparently this was Chris Carter's idea. It was something he wanted to play around with. And I think Chano just went with it. But I just think it's a really good episode. I think it's really well written. And I actually... I actually started writing a sequel fan fiction to it, because I think the door is open there, with the whole, the warning of the Kalashari to Mulder about, the evil now recognizing him. And I actually started writing a fanfic, but actually, I don't know what it is about this episode. It just really instills the darkness in you. It is so dark. And yeah, I got a little too dark with the fanfic, and I had to back off because I realized I was getting too into it, and I was just like, this is wigging me out. It's this is one of those episodes I think is underrated, and I definitely don't think it gets talked about. I don't know if it's the subject matter, or if it's just like Mulder and Scully again are kind of just ineffective. I don't like Karen Kosev's inclusion, but I can't help it. I like this episode. I like watching it. It's not one of those first ones you think of. I'm not even kidding. So when I was watching the DVD discs, I was watching the Blu-ray, sorry, and I just let the episodes play one after the other, and I would be like, what episode's next? And as you're getting further through, and you know the basic ones that you normally watch, and I'm sat there and I'm like, I don't know what episode comes next, and you're sat there and it starts up and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot we hadn't watched that yet. And that's what the Kalashari is like for me. So I think this is a good episode, a very dark episode, a darkness I don't think they really went back to. I mean, obviously they had horror episodes and stuff, and again, I think a lot of the body horror of Home, and the idea of the Home, but that's a very different kind of horror. Whereas this is one of those just not psychological, but it's just a very different type of horror. I can't explain. Home is like along that kind of slasher, kind of that kind of horror. The Michael Myers and that kind of thing horror. Whereas this is more, I mean, I guess you could say like The Conjuring or something like that. It's a very different, but it's worth checking out. And I don't think, what I was saying is, I don't think they went back to this kind of horror truly until like season 8 with some of those episodes. So yeah, I reckon it's an S rank easily. I just enjoy it, and I wish I'd watched it more. I loved the introduction of Chuck Burks. We're actually running out of space on this. What happens when you get to the end of the ranking? That'll be interesting. Anyway, I've never had this many S rank episodes. Anyway, mind you, there are a lot of episodes in this season, and if you notice, we have none down in the C and D rank. And this is where we start to test it, because next up is Epimasculata. Again, this is one that does not get talked about much. It's just, this episode, again, is very tense. This, I believe, was written by Chris Carter and Howard Gordon together. And it's a nice, it's just about a virus, a plague, that gets released, possibly due to government involvement, testing subjects, nothing that we could, kind of see in our, relate to at the moment at all. Not I'm saying that the government are, making people sick with corona, but it's a plague episode. It's basically, I assume Chris Carter and and Howard Gordon sat and watched Outbreak and thought, let's do this on the X-Files. Honestly, if you like Outbreak, you'll like this episode. You get Mulder and Scully get sucked into this hunting down this escaped inmate who's infected, and Scully stays at the prison to investigate with the CDC, who might not actually be the CDC. Scully stays to investigate what's going on. Not really clear on what's going on at all, because they don't know that this guy is infected. They just see like these people in the back room, and Mulder's like, why don't you go and see what's going on, and I'm going to go annoy the US Marshals chasing down this convict. And they're questioning as well, because they don't know how they ended up with the case file. It turns out it was just something that came from Skinner's desk, meaning, you know, via Smoking Man, I guess. So Mulder is out on the chase while Scully does science, and I think it's a really good. It takes their strengths and puts them, and again, it works well because it's the kind of thing that Mulder and Scully, you know, complemented each other on with their work. You know, Scully would bring the hard science facts, and Mulder would put his profiling and investigative skills into finding the you know, taking down the criminals and stuff like that. So I actually think it's a really good use of, I think it's a good episode in what it does with the characters. It's I just think this episode doesn't, I hate the creepy, like, I will say, I love the makeup. I hate it in that what it does when it bursts, because I am not a fan of pimple popping, spot picking, all that stuff. Just, no, that grosses me out. So these pulsating pustules that, like, burst to spread their virus everywhere, just makes me want to be sick, to be honest. The body horror in this is exemplary, but grossed me out. So I guess that works as an X-Files episode. I just think it's a good episode. I keep saying that, but there's not actually. It's a very bog standard episode. I love the concern, like when you think that the Scully might be infected. I like the tension then. Again, you know, as I said before, you kind of know that nothing will happen, but you still genuinely feel it. You're like, what? And Mulder's clueless, so he's just like, you okay? You know, he doesn't know that she's at risk or that, and she doesn't tell him. I just enjoy a lot of the acting and the pacing. I feel is really good. I think it's, again, Chris Carter is one of those people who, you know, his pacing can get really tedious and that at times, but there's no excessively boring. Scully has some monologuing, but it's not, it feels necessary. It doesn't feel unnecessary, and it doesn't really drag the episode down. And I just like the tension of trying to catch this inmate and trying to get to the truth and stuff like that. It's just, it's weird because it's a very, it's an episode that you would think is just filler, I would put it in the B rank, but genuinely, I always enjoy watching it. That's the simple fact. I don't really dislike anything about it. So I have to put it, I just think it's really underrated, to be honest. Not a lot of people often reference it. So yeah. Yeah. I'm going to put it in S. Screw you. I like it. Again, not one that I normally think to go back to. It's just, yeah. Yeah. That's right, yeah? No. It's a very basic, it's a very simplistic episode. But it's got a lot of good tension in it. and I appreciate that. And you know, it may not be high tier, but if it comes on, I will watch it without fail. It's not one of those episodes where I'm like, no, yeah. So anyway, next up, we have got Vince Gilligan's debut. I'm pretty sure this is his debut. It's Softlight with guest star Tony Shalhoub, playing a guy who he is cursed after an accident to have a shadow that may suck you into a black hole. He's essentially walking around with a black hole behind him. This is a really for Vince Gilligan's first episode. This is one of those this is what, because when I think of Tony Shalhoub, you think of a lot more comedic roles than that. But you feel really sympathetic towards his character of Chester Ray Benton, and it's, I don't know. I don't feel like he's used to his fullest potential. But I don't know what else they could have done with the character. But you do feel sympathetic for him. I get a little frustrated because I'm like, why does he keep going back to that? So I assume he's going back to that train station, because of the soft light, because he feels protected there and stuff. That there's no, but after he kills one person by accident, why would you keep, like, you're going to the busiest place that you could possibly find, and then he leaves at the end. He doesn't, like, wouldn't it make more sense to just fall asleep at the train station? He says he hasn't slept in that because he doesn't want to fall into his own shadow. But I'm like, okay, so you go there, and unless he's getting kicked out by security, which you never get that impression, because when they check out the security footage, he just wanders off on his own. So, and he's just constantly looking at his shadow like, whoa. I would have just assumed he was on drugs, to be honest. But yeah, so he wanders off on his own. He walks into these areas that are lit by one light or whatever. So, I don't know, you want me to feel sympathetic for him, but I don't feel as sympathetic for him as I do, say, for, Tony Todd's character in Sleepless. I still like the idea, and there is something scary. I mean, it literally takes the whole idea of, being scared of your own shadow to only the most X-Filiest of nth degrees, kind of thing. I appreciate the inclusion of the detective who Scully, used to teach. I thought that was an interesting dynamic. I feel like they could have used her more. She was excessively underused. They kind of put that idea there and then were like, yeah, that's great, but we don't need you anymore, so let's just kill you off. And I was like, okay. I liked that, the idea that Scully wanted to help her out, that, because, she says, about the men's, working in a men's world and stuff like that of, working with the federal agent and stuff like that. And that kind of occupation doesn't really help let women be the work to their fullest potential. And you see that she's looking out for her friend, but at the same time, in the desire to, as say with Jerry, as with Jerry, say, in Ghost in the Machine the year before, it's interesting to see, say, Scully helping her friend, but then the friend, in a bid to get up the professional ladder, essentially screws Mulder and Scully over. And Mulder's like, I get what you're saying about the not feeling equal to your male counterparts. But at least you've never, screwed people over in the pursuit of acceptance, kind of thing. And I like that he recognizes it, but not fully. But at the same time, he's complimenting Scully, so he values her approach. That it's honest as opposed to, what this detective is doing. So I like that, but I just really felt like the detective was underused. I would say that's my issue with the episode. And just, yeah, I don't feel like I think it's a good first outing for Gilligan. I think it's interesting to see him, much like later with Bryan Cranston, using an actor known for comedic roles, say, in a more dramatic role. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But it's interesting to see X, again, in a way, betraying Mulder, taking information, but then they take Chester at the end to experiment with him and stuff. It's interesting to see, again, the duality in a way of, say, X with his desire to aid Mulder, but at the same time he's working for the syndicate, so he has to play that role as well. And I wonder in those moments, because you watch this and it's interesting to see that fear when he sees his colleagues get black holed. It's interesting to see that fear on his face as he's like, oh shit, what are we dealing with here? I just think it's an interesting point to consider, like, his place, because this is really the most we've seen X up to this point, other than the odd bits, say, like with, say, in One Breath, where he shoots the guy and stuff to demonstrate to Mulder the price of doing what he does, etc. I feel like this is the most involvement we've had with X within an X-File. And we'll see more in the next couple of seasons. But this was an interesting outing for his character, and especially in the grand scheme of, again, his place in this whole conspiracy. It's an okay episode. It's not bad. I don't know what it is. There's just something about it that just makes me go, it's good. It's not bad at all. There's nothing I dislike. I just feel it's not Gilligan's best at all. And I think as a result, I would put it as an A. Because I think it's a really good concept. And a good episode with some good acting. And some good story beats. I just don't think it's anywhere near as enjoyable as some of the other episodes. And I'm not the biggest fan of Banton. I get why he is the way he is. I just don't find him I feel like I should be. I feel like it's trying to make me sympathetic towards him, and I probably should be, because this was done to him. Or, not done to him. It was an accident, but he's being betrayed by his co-worker and stuff like that. It was an accident, and I get that, but at the same time, I just feel like some of his actions don't make me feel like I really care that much sometimes about him. I can't explain it. I don't know if it's one of those episodes that you have to be in the right mood when you watch it, or I'm pretty sure I probably enjoyed it more when I watch it than when I'm talking about it. I think it's one of those episodes, if you don't talk too much about it, maybe I'm just talking too much. I mean, I am talking too much anyway, but I don't know. Maybe I've talked myself out of an S rank, but I like it, but there's just something off about it. I can't put my finger on it. When you're just like, I don't know what it is. There's just something I don't think it's hitting its full potential. But anyway, our penultimate episode is Our Town, also known as What Would Happen If Your Favourite Chicken Fast Food Joint Was Run by Cannibals. This one's brought to us by Frank Spotnitz, and, you know, it's his first Monster of the Week episode, and I think as a result he struggles a little bit with it. It's not bad by any means, but it tries to take homage from a lot of stuff, and ends up feeling a little cliched as a result. But the story is actually really creepy and unsettling, because, you know, welcome to Dudley, Arkansas, home of Chaco Chicken, where apparently the residents are a cult that are, in a bid to stay young forever, are killing off outsiders, and eating them and feeding any remains to the chickens that then get fed to the public. So, you know, your normal stuff. This has some really good creepy imagery in it. Yeah, because what happens is they eat somebody who was suffering with mad cow's disease, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and they end up, the residents of Dudley end up getting ill themselves, and as a result, one of the people who's infected, she goes a little crazy and ends up getting killed at this. She sees a head of this person that got killed, this health food inspector that gets bumped off in the teaser, and she sees his head. She's in the factory line, the chicken factory line, and she all of a sudden sees his head on one of the spikes, and she goes mad and she gets shot and falls into the slurry kind of pit. And yeah, just the imagery is really creepy and unsettling. And especially then when you get into the area where you find all the residents out in the field, for their barbecue with their massive a bonfire. And there's something very... And I think this is a problem, like I say, it falls into a lot of horror cliches. It feels like Children of the Corn. I was just waiting for like the kids to suddenly appear out of nowhere and kill all the adults that stood there. But I love the premise. I think it's really creepy. It's good to see. I always enjoy Gary Grubbs in roles, but you know, he turns up as one of the firefighters in Fight the Future. So whenever I see him in this, I can't help it. I don't know why. I'm just always waiting for him to turn around and go, "What about my man?" It's a personal joke, but yeah, it's just everybody's acting in this is fine. But the woman who plays the wife of the cheating health food inspector, yeah, she's not as good. She goes round to Chaco's mansion, and she's all like, "Oh, but he got eat. Did you eat him?" and stuff like that. And she's acting all worried that she's, now Mulder and Scully are snooping around. She's worried she's going to get caught and all that stuff. And her acting is not the best by any means. And I don't know if it's the script that doesn't serve her, but yeah, I didn't feel her acting particularly. I don't even remember her name, because, and that sounds bad, but I will say, no matter how much it feels like there's a community here and it's really unsettling, and for Mulder and Scully, as outsiders coming in, there is something, like I say cult, but there is something very cultish about it. But none of the characters in this town are really fleshed out at all. I didn't feel connected to any of them. And you want me to feel like they're bad guys and that, but I'm just like, I don't really care about these people. I feel like it's a main focus for like Mulder and Scully's investigation, and then there's just all these other people there, and I'm like, I don't really care about. There's no real protagonist, or you could say that Chaco is the antagonist, but he's the only one that you really spend much time with. So yeah, I think it's a really good premise. I love the idea, and there's a lot of really good direction here. I think from Rob Bowman again, but I didn't feel it was as fleshed out as it could have been character-wise. I love the tension of, Scully's, again, kidnapping. That poor woman, honestly, I would have just quit by this point. She gets nabbed, and they go to, cut her head off at the end. And I'm like, seriously, look at this woman. What meal do you think you're going to get out of her? She's nothing but bone. She probably weighs all of like 75 pounds. I do get annoyed that Scully doesn't catch on to about the bones, about the buffering, the soft edges, that maybe that's from boiling or whatever. I guess it's not the thing you think of to learn in Quantico. But yeah, it always bugs me that she didn't really catch on to that. But I do love the image of her. She turns up at the place where all these bones are laid out that they found. And she turns up with this massive bargain bucket of chicken. Clearly, for dinner for her and Mulder, although it looks like meal for about 5 people as opposed to 2. But she turns, once Mulder proposes the whole cannibalism thing, they go to leave, and she looks down at this bucket and goes, and puts it down and walks away. I just love that moment. There's some really good moments in this. I love the premise and that. But I don't think I enjoy watching the episode, but yeah, I just always feel like it's a bit, there was so much promise here. And Frank Spotnitz would go on to write much better stuff. But this one, I think, I always enjoy it, and I kind of want to put it as A. I think because I love the Mulder and Scully interactions, and I love the investigating and stuff. But at the same time, I'm just like, I think I've got to put it in B. Because, yeah, it's just something. I feel very divided on the episode, and I think as a result it belongs here. I think it's one of those, say like with Blood, it's an episode that I enjoy, but you have to be in the right mood for it to enjoy it to its fullest. And I think sometimes if you think too much about who you can connect with in the episode, you're like, I don't feel sorry for any of these people. And yeah, you're not supposed to, but it's always good in an episode to, other than Mulder and Scully, it's always good to have somebody in the area that you can connect with. And I couldn't tell you anything about these characters, their names or whatever, except for Chaco, Mr. Chaco. So yeah, that's why I put that in B. Like I say, none of these episodes are bad at all. But anyway. Finally, it's only taken us like forever to get here. But we're finally at the final episode. The season 2 finale, which is actually the first part of a 3-part arc. It is Anasazi, set in Gallup, New Mexico, where we meet Albert Hosteen for the first time, played excellently by Floyd Red Crow Westerman, and his family. You don't really have much to do with his son, but Eric, the grandson, is the one who finds this buried boxcar out in the New Mexico desert. And the thing, for anybody who doesn't know, the fascinating thing about this whole set is they found a quarry in Vancouver and painted the whole thing red. And then painted it back, got rid of the paint afterwards. They had gallons of this paint to paint it all to make. And, now something like that would be CGI'd or whatever. And, they could have easily green screened it. They could have just, had the image of Mulder and Eric on this moped. And then, had them looking at a green screen. But they don't. They actually painted this whole area. And that's just that's commitment right there to making it feel real. So I think that has to be applauded. But yeah, we find Mulder starting to feel ill. We find out later that his water has been tainted with some kind of psychedelic, like LSD or whatever, to slowly drive him mad and aggressive. And this is all good, and I love it. And poor Skinner. Skinner ends up with getting punched the shit out of by Mulder. I can start to think that Skinner is like the punching bag of this show. Other than Krychek, Skinner gets beat up by everybody. But it is kind of hot. I won't lie. It's entertaining to watch just for that. But I like watching Mulder's paranoia because he's always somebody who is a paranoid character just by kind of default, by, you know, from his backstory in a way, but also just the fact that he deals with so much conspiracy stuff and that. But to see him cycling through this, you know, not sleeping and being affected by the drugs, I think it's actually fun to... I will say, I think it's well played. That you see, he starts out and very gradually descends into this aggression. I love how, like, he snaps at Skinner straight away, and yet you can see him kind of fighting it when it comes to talking with Scully sometimes. And I just love Scully's, like, desperation to try and figure out the facts and she covers for Mulder against, like, a board of assistant directors, who unfortunately includes a cameo from writer Chris Carter, who he and Duchovny came up with this story, and then Carter wrote the teleplay. But yeah, Carter makes a cameo as this person who has to make a point. Weren't you assigned to debunk Agent Mulder? And it feels a little clumsy. But at the same time, I like, you know, especially because obviously it's a season finale, I like, you know, for anybody who catches it, you're reminding people, you know, this 2-year journey essentially was, Scully was there to debunk Mulder. So I actually really like that you're drawing attention to it, the fact that, and in a way, I don't like it because it feels a little too close to, was it Erlenmeyer Flask, where she had that meeting with Skinner at the beginning, and he was catching up on what was going on with them and stuff like that. And she again defended him then. It feels a little too close to that. But at the same time, I do appreciate it. But it does get a bit repetitive at times. But here it works. And I think especially as they're investigating why Mulder is, you know, losing his shit, I think it's pertinent there, because you do wonder why Scully would be covering from him when he's acting up so much. But yeah, no, I enjoy the story of the fact that, you know, Mulder's been being drugged and stuff like that. But I do struggle. The whole thing is, like, later on, Mulder said, you know, Scully's like, you know, they weren't messing around. They wanted, because somebody else in the apartment building gets shot by their spouse. And you're like, one, why aren't more people being affected by this tainted water? And two, just, it happens so early. Like, we start out, like, mid-res in a way, like, with Mulder already affected by this. And yet, he doesn't get the documents from this associate of the gunman until a little, 10 minutes in or something. So you're like, and then the argument at the end is, oh, well, he was getting too close. It's like, okay, but they didn't know he was getting those documents or that. Why would they start drugging him already? You'd never get any impression in the episodes before that they would start taking action against him. So yeah, I get it once they start, like they said, Krychek. It's odd to see Krychek here, because he hasn't appeared since the abduction arc at all. And if you're not watching all the episodes, you might be, who is this? Because you don't really get much like who this person is. Obviously, if you know the show and that, you do. But it just feels he just appears out of nowhere with no introduction and kills Pa Mulder. And that's, again, Dave is crying. Not the best. But could be argued that it's because Mulder is, in an altered state, if you will. But I love the premise. I love the story, actually. I really enjoy this episode. And of course, it unfortunately ends on just the most baffling of to be continueds. That also was, again, stressful. You're like, I gotta wait until next year. We hadn't had that before, really. We've had to be continueds, but not for a whole season gap, like, end of season gap kind of thing. So that's really stressful. But I love the action. I think it's well directed by I think it's Bob Goodwin, R.W. Goodwin. Good direction. I love, like I say, the set pieces and that. I love the Scully's fight to try and find out what's going on with Mulder and defend him. There's this lovely little line, and she's like, "Why did you punch Mulder? Why did you punch Skinner?" And he's like, "I've been thinking about it, and I don't know." And you can feel that kind of like worry build, that she can see that he's worried. He's trying to figure out what's going on. So yeah, I enjoy the character dialogue and stuff. There's nothing too Carterish clunky. But yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's a good season finale. Unfortunately, the following 2 episodes, questionable. But we'll get to that when we get to season 3, I guess. It's funny to see the lone gunman in a much better role than they had in Fearful Symmetry. Sharing their normal kind of, as well. It's good to call back actually to the Thinker, who we got mentioned in At One Breath. But yeah, I think it's a good episode. I love the action. It's not Little Green Men caliber episode. But I think as a season finale, I think it's entertaining, with good set pieces, and yeah. Would I put it in S? That's a good question. Yes. Let's go S. Yeah. Yeah, I like it that much. I do think it's good. Certainly think it's worth checking out, and I think it's got, interest in having the aliens, especially with the smallpox vaccinations. Yeah, so that's Anna Salzi. I don't think I've really got much more to say about that. This is where I go away and I'm like, I've got to re-record that all over again. And trust me, we've had that for a number of episodes here, and that's why it's taken me so long to work on it once I finally started working on it. But that's season 2. Such a good season. Like I say, there's nothing that I particularly dislike, that I find bad or anything like that. I do think it has some. I think even in these episodes that I've put in B rank, they're not bad episodes. They're entertaining, but either you have to be in the right mood for them, or they're the kind of episodes that you can't think too much about. But they're still entertaining. There's nothing exceptionally bad here, and I think for a second season that was starting out with its mythology, that had this thing to work around with Gillian's pregnancy, and for a show that was finding its feet, I think this is amazing, and a good season to follow up season 1. To progress the themes and stuff that were explored in season 1. This is easily, I always I struggle. I always think of this as my second favourite season, but sometimes you will get to my favourite season eventually. But this is one of those ones that I'm always like, it's either second favourite or it's tied first. Because I just think the calibre of episodes here, at no point when I'm watching episodes, usually do I go, if you're binge watching the discs, at no point really do I go, oh no, I can't watch this. 3, as I said, is normally one of those ones I'm more than happy to avoid. But 1, as I said, not a big fan of vampires, and I'm not a big fan of the I just find it a bit pointless. But yeah, I don't absolutely hate or dislike any of these episodes in any of the ways that I dislike, say, the ones that were on the season 1 set. So yeah, that's season 2. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hopefully season 3 I'll be able to watch and record straight away and not have to wait 6 months to get round to recording. So hopefully that'll be out ASAP. It might be, I think these might be two-part videos going ahead, because of obviously the mythology, etc, etc. Especially like I said, we've got 2 parts in season 3 to complete Anastarzi's story. So yeah, so I look forward to doing that. I really look forward to seeing your comments and discussing with you your favourite episodes, what your thoughts are on what I've said about these episodes. I've not always said concisely what I would like to say about them, but I've done my best. I really look forward to seeing your thoughts and hearing your favourite episodes, and especially if you like, really, your favourite episodes are ones that are in the B rank. But thanks so much for watching, guys. Please take care, and I'll see you somewhere down the line.